5 years ago, I was sleeping in my car in a Walmart parking lot in Austin, Texas, wondering if I'd ever feel warm again. Today, I'm sitting in my downtown apartment, looking at a bank account with more money than I ever imagined having, running a nonprofit that's helped over 200 people escape homelessness. People ask me all the time how I did it, expecting some bootstrap story about hard work and determination. And while those things mattered, the truth is stranger and more uncomfortable to talk about. I got lucky. Impossibly, ridiculously, almost cosmically lucky. But here's what I've learned: luck isn't random. And it's not something you just wait around for. I didn't climb out of poverty through conventional means. I fell upward through a series of coincidences so statistically improbable that when I tell people the real story, they assume I'm exaggerating or lying. But every word of what I'm about to tell you is true. And more importantly, I've figured out how to recreate that luck for others. This is the story of how I went from homeless to successful, and how I'm teaching other people to do the same thing. Not through miracles or fairy godmothers, but through understanding how opportunity actually works. My name is Marcus Webb, I'm 34 years old, and this is my story. Let me start with rock bottom, because that's where all good transformation stories begin. In December 2019, I was 29 years old and completely broke. I'd been evicted from my apartment 2 months earlier after losing my job as a prep cook at a restaurant that went out of business. I had no family support. My mom died when I was 16, my dad was in prison, and I'd aged out of foster care at 18 with no safety net. I'd been barely scraping by for years, living paycheck to paycheck, until that final paycheck stopped coming. I spent the first few weeks after eviction couch surfing with friends, but that burned out quickly. Nobody wants a house guest who can't contribute rent. So I started sleeping in my car, a 1998 Honda Civic that I'd bought for $800 and which was on its last legs. I'd park in different Walmart lots around Austin, trying to stay under the radar, using gym memberships for showers until I couldn't afford those anymore either. By February 2020, I was down to my last $47. The car was making a grinding noise that told me the transmission was going. I was eating once a day, usually whatever I could buy at a dollar store. I'd lost about 30 pounds. I had a constant cold that wouldn't go away. And I was so tired. Not just physically, but mentally. Spiritually. The kind of tired that makes you wonder why you're even trying anymore. That's the thing about being homeless that people don't understand if they haven't experienced it. It's not just about not having a place to sleep. It's the constant stress, the constant problem solving, the way every single aspect of life becomes complicated. Where do you go to the bathroom? How do you charge your phone? Where can you exist without being harassed or moved along? How do you apply for jobs when you don't have an address or reliable internet or clean clothes? It's exhausting. It grinds you down until you start to believe you deserve it, that you're fundamentally broken or lazy or stupid, and that's why you're in this situation. I believed that about myself. Completely. And then everything changed because of a sandwich. It was a Tuesday in late February. I was sitting on a bench in a park downtown, trying to stretch my last $5 into something resembling a meal. I'd been looking at job listings on my phone. I had about 15% battery left, but my phone number was about to be disconnected because I couldn't pay the bill, which meant any job applications would be pointless anyway because no one could call me back. I was so deep in despair that I didn't notice the man sitting down next to me until he spoke. "You look like you could use this more than me," he said. I looked up. He was probably in his 60s, black guy with gray hair, wearing a nice suit. He was holding out a sandwich, looked like it was from one of those fancy delis, wrapped in paper with a sticker on it. "I ordered 2 by accident," he said, which was clearly a lie. Nobody accidentally orders 2 sandwiches. But I was too hungry to care about pride. "Thank you," I said, taking it. My hands were shaking. He nodded and sat there while I ate. Didn't say anything, didn't watch me, just sat looking at the park. When I finished, he asked, "You got somewhere to stay?" I should have lied. Should have said yes, maintained some dignity. But I was so tired of pretending. "My car," I said. He nodded like he expected that answer. "I've been there. Long time ago, but I remember what it feels like." We sat in silence for a minute. Then he said, "I'm opening a restaurant." "Well, reopening. Used to have a place years ago, sold it, But I'm getting back into it. Construction's finishing up in a few weeks. You got any experience in kitchens? I was a prep cook for 3 years, I said. Good enough. You want a job? I stared at him. Are you serious? Completely. Pays $15 an hour to start, and I'll need someone who can work evenings. You'd start in about a month when we open. Yes. Yes, absolutely. He pulled out a business card and wrote his personal number on it. I'm Leonard Green. Call me next week and we'll set everything up. In the meantime. He reached into his wallet and pulled out $200 in 20s. This is an advance. Get yourself somewhere to stay for a few nights. Clean yourself up. Get that phone bill paid so I can reach you. I tried to refuse, it felt like too much, like charity, but he insisted. It's not charity, it's an investment. I need a good worker, and you can't work if you're sleeping in your car. Then he left, and I sat there holding $200 and a business card, crying on a park bench, because I'd forgotten that kindness existed. That was the first impossible coincidence. What were the odds that Leonard Green would sit next to me that exact day, at that exact moment when I was at my absolute lowest point? That he'd be opening a restaurant right then? That he'd need someone with my exact experience? I used the money to pay my phone bill, get a week in a cheap motel, and buy some decent clothes from Goodwill. I called Leonard 3 days later, and true to his word, he set up a formal interview. I started working for him in March 2020, right before COVID hit. The pandemic should have destroyed everything. Most restaurants closed. But Leonard's place was set up for takeout and delivery from the beginning. He designed it that way, anticipating the trend. So while other restaurants struggled, we thrived. I went from $15 an hour to $18 within 2 months because we were so busy and Leonard needed reliable people. By summer 2020, I had enough saved for a deposit on a tiny studio apartment. Nothing fancy, 400 square feet, no dishwasher, in a rough neighborhood, but it was mine. I had a roof over my head. I had a bathroom. I could lock a door and be alone. I cried the first night I slept in that apartment. That's where the story could end. Guy gets job, gets apartment, slowly rebuilds life. Inspirational but ordinary. But that's not what happened. The second impossible coincidence came in September 2020. I was working a late shift when a woman came in to pick up a takeout order. She was probably in her 40s, well dressed, and she was on the phone having what sounded like a stressful conversation. Something about a real estate deal falling through. She ended the call, looking frustrated, and I handed her the food. Rough day? I asked, just making conversation. You have no idea, she said. I've been trying to rent out this property for months. Every tenant falls through at the last minute. What kind of property? I asked. Duplex. Nice place, good neighborhood. But everyone who applies either has terrible credit or wants to negotiate down to almost nothing. I'm about to give up. I don't know what possessed me to say it. Normally I mind my own business, but I said, I might be interested. She looked at me skeptically. Can you afford $1,200 a month? I was paying $650 for my studio. $1,200 seemed impossible. But something made me say, can I see it first? Long story short, she showed me the duplex the next day. It was beautiful, 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit in a safe neighborhood with good schools nearby. Way beyond what I could afford alone. I don't suppose you know anyone looking for a roommate, she asked. As it happened, I did. Another cook at Leonard's restaurant, a guy named David, had just mentioned he was looking to move out of his girlfriend's place after a breakup. Within a week, David and I moved into that duplex together, splitting the rent. My half was $600 cheaper than my studio and I was living in a much better place. The landlord, whose name was Patricia, told me later that I was the only person who toured the property in the last 2 months who actually followed through. Everyone else backed out or disappeared. You saved me, she said. I was about to sell it at a loss. But really, she saved me. Because living in that neighborhood changed everything. The third impossible coincidence happened at the duplex in November 2020. I was taking out the trash when I ran into my neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Chen who lived next door. She was struggling to carry groceries, so I helped her. She invited me in for tea, and we got to talking. Mrs. Chen was a retired software engineer, and when she found out I'd dropped out of high school and never gone to college, she seemed personally offended. "You're too smart to be stuck in a kitchen," she said, which was presumptuous but also kind. "I don't have the money for school," I told her. "Then learn online. Free resources everywhere. What are you interested in?" I'd always been good with computers, back when I had access to them. So I said, "Maybe coding." Mrs. Chen lit up. She spent the next hour showing me free coding resources, online courses, YouTube tutorials. She set me up with a laptop she wasn't using anymore. It's just sitting in my closet gathering dust, and told me to come by whenever I needed help. Over the next 6 months, Mrs. Chen became an informal mentor. I'd work my shifts at the restaurant, come home, and spend 3 to 4 hours every night learning to code. JavaScript, Python, HTML, CSS. Mrs. Chen would review my work, give me projects to practice on, introduce me to concepts. By May 2021, I'd built a portfolio of small projects. Mrs. Chen helped me create a resume that emphasized skills rather than formal education. She connected me with a former colleague who was hiring junior developers at a tech company. I got the job. $55,000 a year. More than 3 times what I was making at the restaurant. I cried when I got the offer letter. Called Leonard to thank him and give 2 weeks' notice. He was thrilled for me. "You were always too smart for my kitchen," he said, echoing Mrs. Chen. "Go do something bigger." That tech job changed my life. Within a year, I was promoted to mid-level developer. Within 2 years, I was making $85,000. I moved into my own 1-bedroom apartment. I bought a reliable car. I had health insurance. I had a savings account. I'd made it. By any reasonable standard, I'd escaped poverty and homelessness and built a stable life. But I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that none of it would have happened without those coincidences. Leonard sitting next to me. Patricia needing a tenant. Mrs. Chen being a retired software engineer who happened to live next door. Remove any one of those moments, and I'd probably still be struggling. Maybe still homeless. That bothered me. It felt unfair that my success depended so much on luck. What about all the other people sleeping in cars, sitting on park benches, living in their own version of rock bottom? They were working just as hard as me, maybe harder. Why did I get lucky and they didn't? So in early 2023, I decided to do something about it. I started researching the science of luck. Sounds crazy, but there's actual academic research on this. Psychologists have studied lucky vs unlucky people, and they've found that luck isn't random, it's a mindset and a set of behaviors. Lucky people put themselves in situations where good things can happen. Notice opportunities others miss. Act on those opportunities quickly. Maintain social connections. Stay optimistic even during setbacks. Take small risks regularly. When I looked back at my own story, I realized I'd done all of these things, often without realizing it. I was at that park instead of isolating in my car. I talked to Leonard instead of just taking the sandwich silently. I mentioned my interest in the duplex. I helped Mrs. Chen with her groceries. I'd created the conditions for luck to find me. And I realized I could teach this. In March 2023, I started a nonprofit called Second Chance Network. The concept is simple. I connect homeless individuals with what I call opportunity accelerators, people like Leonard, Patricia, and Mrs. Chen who are willing to provide small amounts of help at crucial moments. But it's not just about connecting people. It's about teaching them how to recognize and act on opportunities. How to have conversations that open doors. How to be in the right place at the right time. I started small, working with 5 homeless individuals in Austin. I helped them identify their skills and interests. Create opportunities for positive interactions. Build networks of people who could help. Recognize when luck was presenting itself. Act decisively when opportunities appeared. Within 6 months, 4 of the 5 had found stable housing and employment. The 5th took longer, but he got there eventually. Word spread. Other homeless individuals started reaching out. Then social workers and case managers started referring people to me. Then local businesses started offering to be opportunity accelerators, providing jobs, housing, mentorship. Now, 2 years later, Second Chance Network has helped over 200 people transition out of homelessness. Our success rate is about 73%, which is extraordinary in this field. Most traditional programs have success rates below 50%. The secret isn't money, though we do provide small grants when needed. The secret is teaching people how to create and recognize luck. Let me give you an example. Last year, I worked with a woman named Tasha. She was 32, had been homeless for 18 months, living in her car with her 6-year-old daughter. She'd lost her apartment after a medical emergency wiped out her savings. Tasha was smart, hardworking, and desperate. But she'd become isolated, ashamed. She'd stopped talking to people, stopped going places, stopped believing anything could change. The first thing I did was get her to a community center. Just being around people. Then I encouraged her to volunteer there a few hours a week, helping with childcare, something she was naturally good at. Within 2 weeks, another volunteer mentioned that her sister ran a daycare and was looking for help. Tasha applied and got the job. Part-time at first, but with free childcare for her daughter. With income coming in, Tasha was able to afford a room in a shared house. Not perfect, but stable. And the daycare owner was so impressed with her work that within 3 months, she offered Tasha full-time hours and benefits. 6 months after that, Tasha enrolled in an early childhood education program at community college. She's planning to open her own daycare eventually. Did I make any of that happen directly? No. But I helped create the conditions where it could happen. I got Tasha to the community center. I encouraged her to volunteer. I helped her recognize that the conversation with that other volunteer was an opportunity, not just small talk. I taught her how to be lucky. That's what this is really about. Luck isn't magic. It's about positioning yourself where good things can happen, staying open to possibilities, and acting when opportunities present themselves. Here's what I teach people. 1. Proximity to opportunity. You have to be where opportunities exist. This means going to places where you can meet people, have conversations, be visible. Parks, libraries, community centers, volunteer events. Homeless people often isolate out of shame or exhaustion, but isolation guarantees nothing changes. 2. Conversational courage. Most opportunities come through conversations. You have to be willing to talk to people, even when it's uncomfortable. I got my first job because I talked to Leonard. I found my apartment because I made small talk with Patricia. Random conversations change lives. 3. Radical openness. You can't predict where help will come from. Mrs. Chen didn't look like a tech mentor. Patricia didn't look like someone who'd rent to a homeless cook. Be open to everyone and everything. 4. Quick action. When opportunities appear, act immediately. Don't overthink, don't wait for perfect conditions. I called Leonard 3 days after meeting him. I toured the duplex the next day. Speed matters. 5. Reciprocity. Help others whenever you can, even in small ways. I helped Mrs. Chen with groceries. That's it. That tiny act of kindness changed my life. Build social capital by being useful and kind. 6. Persistent optimism. This is the hardest one. When you're homeless, optimism feels stupid. But pessimism guarantees you'll miss opportunities because you won't look for them. You have to believe things can change, even when evidence suggests otherwise. These principles sound simple, maybe even obvious. But they're incredibly difficult to implement when you're in survival mode. That's why the mentorship matters. I work with people one-on-one, helping them see opportunities they're missing, encouraging them to take actions they're scared to take. And it works. Not 100% of the time, nothing does. But it works far more often than traditional approaches. I've been criticized for this model. Some people say I'm just repackaging neoliberal bootstrap mythology, that I'm blaming people for their poverty by suggesting they need to create their own luck. But that's not what I'm saying at all. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. We need affordable housing, living wages, universal health care, better social safety nets. I advocate for all of those things. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for those systemic changes, real people are suffering right now. And they need practical tools that work within the current system, broken as it is. I'm teaching people how to navigate an unfair system, not pretending the system is fair. The truth is, everyone who succeeds gets lucky somewhere along the way. The difference is that wealthy people are positioned to encounter more luck. They have networks, resources, Safety nets. They're in rooms where opportunities happen. Poor people are excluded from those spaces. My work is about helping poor people access the same opportunity structures that wealthy people take for granted. And it's working. Last month, one of our program participants, a guy named Jerome who'd been homeless for 3 years, got hired at a marketing firm. Not an entry-level job. A real position with real pay, because he met someone at a volunteer event who saw his potential and vouched for him. That's not luck in the mystical sense. That's engineered luck. Jerome put himself in that space, had that conversation, followed up, and acted on the opportunity. I helped him see that those actions mattered. Today, Second Chance Network has 15 staff members, all of whom were formerly homeless. We have a $2.3 million annual budget funded by grants, donations, and partnerships with local businesses. We're expanding to 3 more cities in Texas this year. And me? I'm making $95,000 a year as the executive director, which is more money than I ever imagined having. I have a nice apartment, a reliable car, savings, investments. I go to therapy to process my trauma. I have friends, hobbies, a life. 5 years ago, I was sleeping in a Walmart parking lot, convinced I was worthless. The transformation still feels unreal sometimes. But here's what I want people to understand: I'm not special. I'm not uniquely talented or hardworking or deserving. I got lucky, yes. But I also created conditions where luck could find me. And now I'm teaching others to do the same. If you're reading this and you're struggling, whether you're homeless or just barely getting by, here's what I want you to know. Your situation is not your fault. The system is broken and unfair. You deserve better. But also, you have more power than you think. Not the power to single-handedly overcome systemic oppression, but the power to make small choices that can compound into big changes. Go somewhere today where you might meet someone. Have a conversation you'd normally avoid. Help someone with something small. Notice opportunities you'd normally dismiss. Act quickly when something feels right. Create conditions for luck. I'm not promising miracles. I'm not saying everyone who does these things will end up where I am. Life is still unfair, and some people face barriers I never did. But I've seen it work hundreds of times now. I've watched people transform their lives not through supernatural intervention, but through small, strategic actions that accumulated into something bigger. You don't have to climb out of poverty. Sometimes, you can fall upward. You just have to be in a position to catch the wind when it comes. 5 years ago, Leonard Green sat next to me on a park bench and handed me a sandwich. That one moment changed everything. Now I'm trying to be Leonard Green for as many people as possible. Creating those moments. Being in the right place. Handing out sandwiches, metaphorically and sometimes literally. Because I learned something important: luck is real, but it's not random. It's a skill that can be learned and taught. And everyone, no matter how far down they've fallen, deserves the chance to learn it. That's my story. That's my mission. If you want to help, donate to Second Chance Network or volunteer. If you're struggling, reach out. If you know someone who's homeless, tell them about programs like mine that focus not just on immediate needs but on teaching opportunity recognition. And if you're just an ordinary person going through life, remember, you might be someone's Leonard Green. You might be the person who sits down at exactly the right moment with exactly the right offer. Pay attention to those moments. Act on them. You might change someone's life. Someone certainly changed mine. And now I get to spend my life paying it forward. That's not just success. That's purpose. That's meaning. And it all started with being hungry enough to accept a sandwich from a stranger. Sometimes the biggest transformations begin with the smallest kindnesses. Never forget that.